Herzlich willkommen zurück, Leute, zu Let's Play Alan Wake. Ja, wir haben jetzt dieses Auto. Hehehehe. Beschleunigen, steuern, Bremse, rückwärts fahren, geht alles damit. Okay. Oh, oh, da vorne ist schon wieder einer. Na, komm her. Bremsen, rückwärts fahren. Ah, das ist ein kleines Tutorial. Gedrückt halten um... Ah, Fernlicht. Ich verstehe. Wenn ich ihn jetzt überfahre... Plong. Oh, das macht Spaß. Das ist toll. Autos fahren. Mit Autos irgendwelche Hinterwäldler. Oh, aber dass die Maus auch noch mitsteuert, das ist schon ein bisschen verwirrend. Oh, guck mal da. Das dachte ich mir irgendwie, dass hier irgendwas noch rumliegt, wenn ich schon in die andere Richtung fahren muss. Thermosflasche. Oh, lala, lala. Jetzt fühlt man sich gerade ein bisschen sicherer mit dem Auto. Komm. Mal ab dafür. Ja, ja. Ich werde die jetzt einfach mal ein wenig ignorieren hier. Ah! Was habe ich denn da gerade? Ja, dachte ich mir. Okay, wahrscheinlich da in der Kabine. Oh Gott, das ist ja ein ganzer Sauhaufen. Oh Gott. Lass mich raus. Lass mich doch raus. Vollidiot, ey. Oh. Ernsthaft, Leute. Uncool. Ah, lala, 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 la. Wo muss ich denn lang? Jetzt mal abgesehen von... kann das Auto auch kaputt gehen? Ich denke. Auf jeden Fall mal um dieses Ding da drumherum fahren. Okay, hier geht's auch nicht weiter. Geht's hier weiter? Ah, da komme ich so auch nicht durch, aber da hinten ist bestimmt irgendetwas. So wie ich den Laden hier kenne. Ja, 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 ja. Oh Mann, ey. Ich bin doch ausgewichen. Ja, 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 ja. Eine Seite. Zeit mal nachladen. Boah. Ellen. Ja, ich habe auch schon erzählt bekommen... Oh, was haben wir denn da? Dass es hier durchaus... dass es hier durchaus Passagen gibt, wo die Gegner unendlich kommen. Unter anderem hat man mich auch schon mal so weit gespoilert, dass es die erste... Oh, Alter. Dass es die erste Passage mit dem Auto zum Beispiel ist. Oh. Kontrollpunkt. Kurz verschnaufen. Ja, deswegen habe ich mich da jetzt gerade auch gar nicht so lange an diesen Viechern aufgehalten. Sondern bin mehr oder weniger direkt mal durchgelaufen. Oh, da oben ist wieder alles voll mit Vögel. Ach, schaut an, hier bin ich. Okay. Okay. Ja, hier waren wir ja schon. Habe ich das durchsucht? Nee. Ach, guck mal an. Das habe ich beim ersten Mal vor lauter Ich muss Rusty retten überhaupt nicht gesehen. Errungenschaft freigeschaltet. Hey, cool. Verdammt guter Kaffee. Ja. Das finde ich auch. Jetzt ist es ja nicht mehr weit bis zu Barry. Och, Leute. Diese Geräuschkulisse. Okay, wenigstens hört mal die Musik auf. Aha. Das stand gerade eben auch noch nicht so, oder? Komme ich da jetzt überhaupt durch? Hallo? Ah, ja. Oh. Meine Fresse. Erschreckt mich doch nicht.
The flare gun was probably the best weapon I could imagine against the dark things I was facing.
Da schau mal. Oh. Die werden wir auch gleich mal benutzen, da ich nicht weiß... Ich gehe davon aus, wenn ich jetzt da oben bin, bei Barry wird dieses Kapitel auch zu Ende sein. Oh, lauf doch mal ein bisschen schneller. Oh, Kontrollpunkt. Ich geht's Licht an, wenn ich hier vorbeigehe, okay. Ja.
The kidnapper.
Ah.
You son of a bitch! Where's my wife?
Enough horseplay, Wake. You deliver the manuscript, and you can have your woman back. Simple as that.
I don't... Listen. Listen. I'm gonna need time to finish it. I still need to write the ending. I need... a week.
It's not done.
I need a week.
2 days. The old Bright Falls coal mine is nearby. You can find it easy, city boy. The main building, there at noon. You bring the manuscript, you'll get your wife. If not, well, get me?
Yes, yes, I get you.
Wenigstens mal um 12 Uhr Mittag. Nicht um 12 Uhr nachts. Ich glaube, er hat es mittlerweile auch verstanden, dass das eine echt scheiß Idee war. Oh mein Gott. Jetzt so langsam verstehe ich, was Barry meint. Ja, damit hat er recht. Es sind ein paar Vögel da ums Haus. Ah. Alles mitnehmen, alles mitnehmen. Oh, ich habe wieder 3 Schuss hierfür. Schön. Okay. Barry vor den Vögeln retten. Wow. Ah, Batterie nehmen. Ah, auch noch was. Okay. Da die Tür ja noch nicht offen ist. Hohoho. Muss ich die jetzt wirklich alle töten, die da oben rumfliegen? Aber nicht wirklich, oder? Sag mal. Ich sollte vielleicht doch nicht so in der offenen Gegend rumstehen.
The only good thing about this goddamn horrible situation is that I'm not allergic to birds. Shoot!
Das ist so ein Hypochonder, der Kerl. Oh, ich sollte wirklich die Waffe nach jedem Mal schießen nachladen. Ansonsten könnte es leicht blöd werden. Ja. Gott, ey. Mach, dass es aufhört. Oh. Puh. Die greifen aber auch immer von hinten an, die Drecksviecher. Meine Güte.
Barry, you can open the door now.
Okay.
They're gone.
Warum war jetzt da drin ein Nebel?
I'm sorry for thinking you were having a psychotic episode, man.
Halt die Schnauze und lass mich rein. Oh.
I sent Barry to the town to ask around about a man fitting the kidnapper's description. He'd go through the archives of the local paper. Perhaps he could learn something. Anything about the island and the cabin that had disappeared. The man wanted a manuscript. I had to try to write him one to get Alice back.
Oh, okay. Ich glaube nicht, dass er das Manuskript meint.
For me, the supernatural had always been nothing but a metaphor for the human psyche, a tool to use in writing fiction. Now, it was happening for real, and I couldn't put a single word on paper.
Okay.
Barry Wheeler speaking.
This is Rose.
Rose?
I found Mr. Wake's pages.
Oh, Oh, you sweet, brilliant girl.
Could you and Mr. Wake come get them? I live in the trailer park outside the town.
We'll be there in less than an hour.
Die hört
See you
sich
soon.
komisch an.
Have a great day. Hope you come back soon. Welcome to the old dear diner.
Irgendwie war es ja klar, dass das nicht mit rechten Dingen zugeht. Ja, und wie ihr schon hört, offensichtlich ist es das Ende von Episode 2. Wow. Das war mal abgefahren. Also wenn ich Alan wäre, ich würde diesen Kidnapper, dem würde ich was erzählen. Gut. Ja, das ist jetzt eine verdammt kurze Folge gewesen. Ende Folge 2. Okay. Ja, ich würde sagen, schauen wir uns noch das Intro an von Episode 3. Ja, komm. Wir schauen uns das Intro noch an. Ja, dann gehe ich davon aus, dass jetzt gleich wieder eine Zwischensequenz kommt. Deswegen schon mal vorweg, viel Spaß damit.
Previously on Alan Wake, Alice has been kidnapped.
Alan, please help me.
Alice?
You'll do exactly what I say if you ever want to see your wife again.
I can't tell anyone except my agent Barry.
Damn it, Barry, they'll kill her. You're my best friend, and I'm worried that you're not right in the head.
The ransom is a manuscript I supposedly wrote that's coming true before my eyes.
It happened just the way it was on that page. So dark.
I have found only a few scattered pages.
I want the entire manuscript.
The deadline is in 2 days.
I found Mr. Wake's pages.
Good girl.
Folge 3. Lösegeld.
How the hell did she get her hands on the manuscript anyway?
I don't know. She's resourceful. I told you you were too hard on her. Listen, I found out all sorts of interesting stuff while I was digging around.
Yeah.
Mr. Wake, it's Sheriff Breaker. We have an FBI agent here, Agent Nightingale.
FBI?
He's anxious to see you. You'd better come to the station.
Okay, I'll be right over, Sheriff. Let's make this quick, huh?
Help you folks? Name's Randolph. I'm the manager.
We're looking for Rose. Works as a waitress down at the diner.
Rose, sure. Nice girl. Who wants to know?
I'm Alan Wake.
The writer, huh? I heard on the radio you were visiting. Well, I'll show you her trailer. That Rose, she's a nice girl. Always pays her rent on time.
As I was saying, Al, I found all sorts of weird stuff from the local newspaper's archives. This place is crazy. Disappearances, mysterious deaths, urban legends come true, and, get this, most of this stuff takes place around Cauldron Lake.
Well, you ain't wrong, mister. The Indians thought the lake was a doorway to the underworld. I'm the God-fearing type myself. I don't hold with that sort of thing.
Yeah, okay. Anyway, there was an island there owned by a guy called Thomas Zane. Now, some of the articles I found about him make him out to be a famous writer, but I ran a bunch of searches, couldn't find a single thing he wrote. Zane was heavily into diving, so much so that the place came to be called Diver's Isle. But the volcano under the lake erupted in 1970, and Zane went down with the island.
Okay. Randolph folgen. Nein, ich habe euch ja gesagt, haha, als allererstes werden wir jetzt mal das hier machen. Und zwar werden uns diese ganzen Manuskripte anhören. Ich werde dabei nicht sprechen, ich werde die einfach alle nach und nach durchklicken. Ich wünsche euch viel Spaß dabei.
Departure by Alan Wake. The man turned to face me. His face was covered in shadows. It was hard to make him out in the darkness of the forest that surrounded us, but the axe he lifted was plain to see. It glistened with the blood of his victim. He grinned madly. The shadows were alive, distorting his features. It was a scene from a nightmare, but I was awake. The Taken stood before me. It was impossible to focus on it, as if it stood in a blind spot caused by a brain tumor and eye disease. It was bleeding shadows like ink underwater, like a cloud of blood from a shark bite. I was terrified. I squeezed the flashlight like my life depended on it, willing it to stop coming any closer. Suddenly something gave, and the light seemed to shine brighter. I heard them before I saw them, swooping down from the sky and screeching as they came. I spun around just as the cloud was upon me. For an instant, I stared into 100 dead eyes, black pearls glittering in the darkness. I raised the flashlight and the swarm exploded like fireworks. Feathers burned, turned into ash. I couldn't hear my scream above theirs. At first, I kept finding the pages as if by accident. The book I couldn't remember was either a terrible and true prophecy or an act of creation that had rewritten the world. I began to hunt the pages feverishly, for they held the answer to the mystery. With it, I could save myself. With it, I could save Alice. I stepped into the gas station's garage. It was dark and quiet. The place was a mess. It looked like someone trashed the place or that there'd been some kind of fight. Light spilled into the room through an open door at the back, and I made my way toward it. Without any warning, I was blinded by a bright light. An old portable TV on the shelf had come alive by itself. Impossibly, I could see myself on the screen, talking like a madman. "The cabin on Cauldron Lake?" she asked. The sheriff looked at me suspiciously. The early morning light flooded through the office windows. I would probably never have gotten out of the woods alive without her help, but I couldn't tell her the truth of what I'd faced the previous night. She'd think I was lying or crazy. She'd lock me up, and she wouldn't help me find Alice. Stucky spat on the garage floor and tried to shake the cobwebs from his head. Ever since the couple never showed to pick up the keys, things had been fuzzy. Something, a feeling, caught his attention. Stucky looked up and stared as his brain tried in vain to process the horror before him. He stumbled back, knocking over a can of oil. A black pool spread across the floor while he struggled for a brief moment, then let go as the unrelenting darkness engulfed him. Rose knew she had been gushing, but right now she didn't care. As far as she was concerned, her brief meeting with Alan Wake was literally the high point of her life. She watched as he got in the car with his wife. She was pretty, confident, at ease with Wake. Not like Rose. They were perfect for each other. She'd have given anything to be called their friend. Barry Wheeler was bouncing off the walls. He jumped on a plane after his calls were ignored by both Al and Alice for several days. It could mean that they were both on a second honeymoon, but Barry didn't buy it. Al had been way too unstable for that, not sleeping, messed up. Barry had years of experience dealing with Alan Wake, and he couldn't ignore it. Something was wrong.
It's true what they say about the fall and the sudden stop at the end. I'd lain here in the snow while the lurid chain of scenes that had led me here kept playing in my head. A rerun of my own private snuff movie. A memory of my corpse. Alone at my own wake. Thinking in metaphors again. The femme fatale was gone. Only a sour taste remained of the kiss that killed me. This was a late goodbye. 13 years after I'd gotten my revenge, it had finally caught up with me. It had been a long time to bear the pain. My blood painted the snow red. A gruesome slushy dissolved all the scattered painkillers and leisurely dripped down to the sewer, mingling with the bile of the city, becoming one with it. I can see them now, my wife and my baby. Honey, I'm home.
In spite of its human mask, to describe the dark presence as intelligent would have implied human qualities on something decidedly inhuman. Nonetheless, it found the one spot in the diner that was dark enough. Some light spilled into the corridor, ravaging it, but it took the pain. Horrible as it was, the writer would soon fix that. He would be coming to the one place where it still had power. The kidnapper fired his gun one last time, and the shadow vanished into the darkness it had come from. See? Nothing to it, Wake. The thought of Alice in his hands was revolting. We stood on the wooden platform of Lover's Peak, the waterfall on the mountain behind us, the lights of the radio mast blinking red in the heights above. I fought with the urge to take a swing, force myself to speak. Let's cut the act now. Where's my wife? Alice looked through the viewfinder, lining up the shot. Cauldron Lake was breathtaking. Something caught her eye. A figure standing in the shadows behind the cabin, like a thin woman in a black dress. She lowered the camera and looked again. No one there. Just a collection of bushes that looked vaguely human-shaped. She shook her head and laughed. Barry had never gotten along with Alice, but he knew Alan loved her with an almost frightening intensity. And now something had happened to Alice. And here was Al armed with a gun and saying things people got put in padded cells for. It was as if his friend had experienced a massive psychotic episode and was now totally disconnected from reality. It scared the shit out of Barry. The air in the visitor center was heavy with an awful smell, as if some rotten drowned thing had crawled up from its grave. Rusty kept coughing blood. My eyes were drawn to the twisted shape of his broken leg. The attack had been vicious. Max whined in his cage. Rusty's eyes were wild with fear and terror. He gasped. "Mr. Wake, it happened just the way it was on that page." The visitor center was sturdy, but the impact turned the front of the building into splinters. Rusty was thrown across the lobby like a rag doll and hit the far wall hard. It didn't hurt until he tried to move and saw his leg bend the wrong way, felt the broken ribs stabbing him on the inside. Rusty howled in pain and fear, suddenly afraid to die alone. At the last instant, I changed direction and threw myself down. The axe splintered the trunk of a tree. I stumbled into the pool of bright light. My lungs burned. I was too exhausted to move. I tensed as I waited for the killing blow, but it never came. I raised my head. Nothing moved in the darkness beyond. For the moment, bathed in the cold light, I was safe. In that last instant of consciousness, Rusty thought about Rose. He was older than she was. Rose was barely out of her teens, but she made him feel young and forget what a train wreck his long-dead marriage had been. He still wore the ring. He'd been waiting for her to tell him to take it off. Now she never would. I turned the corner, afraid of what the flashlight's beam might reveal. Suddenly, a roughly painted symbol of a torch glowed in the light. Behind it, hidden by a rock, sat a battered metal trunk. It was here for a reason, packed with supplies, batteries, flares, ammo, things you need to make it through the darkness of the night. Something left behind by someone who knew what I knew, and more. Agent Nightingale didn't want to be in Bright Falls. These little communities revolted him, and he didn't like the trees or the coffee. He now knew that impossible horrors lurked behind the storefronts and smiles. He desperately wanted to turn the car around and just drive until he passed out or ran out of road and booze. But he had a job to do. He had a rider to catch, at any cost. On more than one occasion, Alice had tried to explain to me how it felt to be afraid of the dark. To her, darkness wasn't simply the absence of light, but something more tangible than that. It was something you could touch and feel. Worse than that, it was something with a mind of its own, something malicious and malign. For her, things changed when they were wrapped in darkness. They turned into something else, something foreign, and nothing was safe or innocent anymore. I'd never really understood what she meant, until now. The night had been one desperate situation after another. I was exhausted, and my body felt as though it had been chewed up and spat out. The flashlight was heavy in my hand, and each pull of the trigger sent a painful shock up my arm. But I was finally out of the woods, and things were looking up. That's when I heard the chainsaw. When Barry saw the darkness attack the visitor center, it made him a believer. The men Al said he'd shot, they hadn't been just locals on crank. Somehow the world had changed, like the channel had been switched without warning. You think you're watching a sitcom, and you're really watching a horror show. When the birds started attacking the cabin, Barry wasn't surprised, just terrified. The FBI agent's command froze me in place. I considered surrender. It was all falling apart anyway. I could give in, let someone else deal with it, but it felt all wrong. Call it instinct, his posture, the way he held the gun. He was no friend. Shots ringing in my ears, I leaped for the hole in the fence and stumbled into the darkness beyond. Rose knew that Rusty was in love with her, and she liked him too. She liked him a lot. He taught her to dance, and life had certainly taught her the value of a man who was gentle. He treated her well, made her smile, made her feel good. But Rusty wasn't the prince of her dreams, and that tended to underline the unbearable truth. She was no closer to that Hollywood magic than he was. Nobody in Bright Falls seemed to know where Al was, but Rose, the waitress at the diner, had seen him. From what Barry could tell, Al pretty much fell off the face of the earth when he left the diner. Rose was just the kind of fan that Al hated, but she really tried to help. She was smart too, knew a lot about what was going on in the town, knew a lot about Al, even knew who Barry was. Barry liked her. That was no big surprise. When it came to women, Barry and Al rarely saw eye to eye. Sarah didn't care about the legal threats Wake's agent had made. She let Wake go without argument, because there was something about him she couldn't quite put her finger on, something that reminded her of her father. She didn't think Wake would hurt his wife. Then she thought about the way he waded into Hartman, that hair-trigger rage flaring up without warning. The logging site was a mess. The modular office had been pushed off the cliff. Deputy Thornton climbed up from the wreckage excited, breathing hard from the exertion. Nobody there. It's weird. Don't you think that's weird? Bored, Mulligan let out a mighty snort. Hell, it's always weird, Thornton. Just a question of sorting out what kind of weird it is this time around. There was no misunderstanding. Cauldron Lake was where Alice and I had stayed. But there was no cabin, and no island. I was missing a week. What had happened to me? What had happened to Alice? I had to get her back. I couldn't face life without her.
Ja, das waren auch bislang alle Manuskriptseiten, die wir gefunden haben. Wie gesagt, ich habe es einfach mal unkommentiert so durchlaufen lassen. Allerdings ist mir aufgefallen, dass es eigentlich die Story ist, die wir bislang durchlaufen haben, beziehungsweise schon ein paar Sachen, die wohl noch kommen. Also ein Detective Nightingale hat zum Beispiel noch nicht auf uns geschossen. Ja, da freue ich mich doch schon direkt wieder auf Kapitel 3. Okay, eine etwas längere Folge, fast eine halbe Stunde. Ich hoffe, ihr verzeiht mir das. Ich meine, es ist ja auch ein bisschen Story-Part hier. In Zukunft werde ich auf jeden Fall, so wie ich die Seiten finde, werde ich sie auch vorlesen lassen. Wie gesagt, ich wusste es einfach nicht, dass das Zeug komplett vorgelesen wird und ja, auch ein bisschen mit noch zur Story gehört. Ich dachte, das wäre einfach nur ein blödes Collectible. Ja, dann hoffe ich trotzdem, dass es euch Spaß gemacht hat und wir sehen uns in der nächsten Folge wieder. Bis dann!